Hi everyone, and a special hi to anyone doing their GCSEs right now. Um, so I wanted to talk today about Banksy. Now, in the summer of 2015, now Banksy is a noted graffiti artist and is apparently anonymous, and he revealed his new project, which he called a Bemusement Park, located in a derelict outdoor swimming pool in the bleak down at heel seaside resort of Weston Super Mare in Somerset. Now, this promised to destroy Disney. This was going to be Banksy's dark reflection of the entertainment giants' theme parks and was going to reveal themselves as the bland, money-grabbing things they really were and to show people the grim and depressing truth. Filled with new artworks from world-class artists, Dismaland was going to turn the world on it of its naive, seaside day-tripping visitors upside down. Vanity Fair quoted, "It is believed to be a satirical and sinister comment on theme parks such as Disneyland." But now, 11 years on, and following Banksy's new statue in Westminster, was Dismaland actually any good? Well, oh no, absolutely not. No. It was fake rubbish and I hate it. I hated it then and I hate it now. And let me tell you why. As a veteran now of over 30 theme and amusement parks and a fully accredited grumpy old witch, they issued that after 50 edits on Wikipedia. I hated it so much and I still do. So let's get into it. Banksy claims anonymity, but his real name and identity is easily discovered online, which I find annoying. He is famous for saying absolutely nothing with his art. Now, it's not to say that art has to say anything, but really, in order to be art, it kind of does. So as you can see behind me, I in fact own this fabric, which is a lovely collage of the works of Banksy. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I've had it for a while. My worry is if I make something out of it, people will think I like Banksy. So here you go. It's set dressing. So despite being apparently politically provocative, his work is clearly highly favoured by the establishment, as can be seen by the reaction of Westminster Council to his latest piece, which is a large statue of somebody holding a flag, but hey, the flag has blown over his face and he's blindly stepping off a precipice. You'll see a picture here. Here's a picture. I might have to cut this while the picture's there. Oh look, this flag-waving patriot is blinded by his patriotism and is falling off a cliff. Oh, how amazing. I am enthralled by the acumen. I love to see the establishment skewered with this razor-sharp wit. This clever image that he did on the side of the Royal Courts of Justice, which is actually super close to where I work, it was cleaned off really quickly. But I think that's more because the judge beating a protester in the image is using a gavel. And all the legal nerds who work around Fleet Street and the Strand lost their rag at this. Gavels are for auctioneers, not judges, you idiot. Had Banksy armed the judge with a sturdy lever arch file, that might have worked better. Can confirm. Anyway, so when someone like Banksy decided to turn his insightful eye towards the concept of a theme park, it had predictable results in that it was bad. I'd also want to insert here that I also did a bit of research on the venue itself. So what I've learned is that this initial conceit of Dismaland, the claim, was that it was a sad, derelict place invigorated by this stunning art, was misleading. Weston Super Mare was a popular seaside resort up until the 1970s, but like a lot of other similar seaside towns in England, it suffered during the 70s because cheap flights meant that people could spend the holiday somewhere hot instead, and really you can't compete with that. However, the town is popular with day trippers and has also found popularity as a commuter town for nearby Bristol, which sounds like a good idea. Imagine that, invigorating seaside towns by equipping them with decent transport links, and then people can travel into bigger cities and live in these towns and reinvigorate them. Just an idea. So yes, like any UK town, there are grim areas, and of course it has problems, but overall, it's not a horrible, dilapidated area to live. And as you can see, Dismaland's venue was originally a Lido, which is an outdoor swimming pool, known as the Tropicana. And it closed as a Lido in 2000, after nearly 70 years in operation. But it remained in use as an outdoor venue and was and still is available to rent from the council. After Dismaland, in fact, the venue was used again as an actual amusement park known as Funland, which traded seasonally on and off until 2024. Now, it had two coasters, both of which were terrible, as you can see from the reviews on Captain Coaster here. Now, Funland didn't open for the 2025 season, presumably because at that point the whole building was being renovated. As you can see from my clips of Street View and the satellite image over the years, this place has never ever actually been derelict. And it was rented to Banksy by the local council, who still proudly mention it as part of the publicity material for the venue. It's also very clear that this was a pop-up art exhibition loosely themed to a theme park rather than anything else. If only Banksy had Mr. Beast money, he could have chucked some fairground rides and bisexual lighting in there and probably made a lot more money. But with that in mind, here's a brief summary of the experience. So you enter through these gates below this sign, which I think is pretty impressive, and entry only costs £3. And I have to give Banksy credit here, that is pretty reasonable. And I will admit there was quite a lot to see. The pop-up did apparently attract a lot of people to the area, which is kind of why the council rents the venue out for events like this. But once through the gates, you entered a hilarious cardboard security checkpoint, which was then made even more grimly hilarious by the fact that there was a real checkpoint just afterwards with real security guards who apparently frisked you and took any spray cans off you in case you were to go and do some unauthorised graffiti in the graffiti artist art exhibition. But following this, as a visitor, you would then tour around what the Guardian described as visual one-liners. So Cinderella's castle is decaying, and inside there's a crashed coach referencing the death of Princess Diana. Zing, I think. I do wonder with this, the first thing that came to mind, apart from our poor horses, was this is Cinderella's magical coach and her magical horses. Wouldn't the horses have returned to mice when they died, and also the pumpkin? I mean, I don't know the rules of magic in the Banksy verse, but that's immediately my first thought was, nah, and then anyway, so that didn't work. And of course, she's also surrounded by paparazzi taking photographs, which is a little bit of kinetic energy there, sort of. But, you could have popped in an animatronic here. You could have had a horse sort of twitching its last. You could have had a moaning for help from the photographers. A little bit more energy in this. And I think it kind of could have worked, I guess. I mean, it's big and it's impressive. I will give them that. Now, the Dodgems ride, don't get excited. The Dodgems was not available for the public to ride on. It just featured a model of death moving slowly back and forth, which is disappointing because, why can't you go on the Dodgems? And here we have a diorama of depressing things, a boatload of refugees, police violence, you get the idea. Commentary on consumerism, check. So the constantly sullen staff in place of cast members was a good idea. I did like that. I didn't really like the fact that this cast member is apparently selling balloons saying, I am an imbecile. Because what's that saying? That I'm assuming that these weren't actually for sale. But is this saying that the people visiting Dismaland are imbeciles for seeing Banksy's art, for being a fan of Banksy? Are they imbeciles because only imbeciles go to theme parks? I mean, that was my first thought, but no, I hate it. I mean, I think if you're trying to be ironic, it would have been better if they had said, I am really happy to be here. And yeah, I would have gone with that. That sounded quite funny, but to be honest, as it is, I feel it's a waste of helium. I did like the way the decaying Cinderella castle was done. I thought that was really cool, with like the tattered tarpaulin and it was all going rotten and stuff like that. I thought that was visually arresting and gave you a nice sense of scale. I thought that was cool. But let's face it, if there had been anything genuinely outrageous or subversive, Weston Super Mare Council would not have permitted the entire event. In addition to Banksy's works, there were 30 other artworks on display in Dismaland, which included some stuff by Damien Hirst and other artists who I think nowadays are just making like stuff for NFTs, stuff like that. So the fine art market is effectively a massive tax dodge for the ultra wealthy, which makes the commentaries on consumerism particularly nauseating to me. And I'm wondering which family trust purchased this weird fiberglass thing and it now keeps it in storage and is going to use it to offset their inheritance tax, I wonder. So anyway, that's the art. But what about the park? Which appeared maybe to have a ride. I couldn't find out whether you can actually go on the Ferris wheel, although if I'm being honest, I probably wouldn't have trusted it if I had had the chance to go on it. I'm not sure. There's footage of the Ferris wheel going round, but I'm not sure if that's simply someone popped a camera on there or someone actually sat on there. Couldn't find out whether it was functional. Given the carousel and the dodgems weren't functional, I'm going towards that it wasn't either. So going back to the park, the first thing, and I think the most important thing really for me, is that none of the artists involved in Dismaland seem to have any particular knowledge or connection with theme parks. So satire and parody always works best with deep knowledge about the subject at hand, sometimes even affection. And although from looking at the artworks, it's obvious that Dismaland was more of a pop-up art gallery than really any kind of amusement or theme park. I'm going to use those terms interchangeably, you know what I mean. But let's meet Banksy where he is and say, yes, this is an amusement. I'm so sorry, a bemusement park. Okay, but it's a bemusement park full of art that has no depth. For the most part, the pieces follow kind of the same formula. So a simulacrum of a familiar thing with a grim twist, or a visual representation of a political issue. You know, like a broad political issue, like it's sad that there are refugees. Urban decay is bad. We shouldn't be lending money to children, you know, stuff like this. Nothing is new here. No, these things have been satirized for hundreds of years. But going back to the actual theme park motif, which I think that's the best you can hope for, really. So, looking at the Ariel statue, which greeted visitors on entry. Now, it's visually very impressive. Ariel is sitting there and she's glitching, and yeah, it looks cool. But what's it really saying about Ariel and Disney? Well, not much really. It's taking a familiar character and subverting it a little. However, in the context of a Disney park, Ariel has more of a presence. She's one of the most beloved characters in the Disney canon. So The Little Mermaid, which you probably know, was one of Disney's most successful films of all time. It cemented Disney's animation studios as an absolute powerhouse. And it also gave animated movies so much credibility. People understood that these were not just for kids. For many people, the Disney version of The Little Mermaid is now the version they're most familiar with, rather than Hans Christian Andersen's quietly desperate story of being madly in love with someone who was never going to return the affection. Whether that was because it was not mutually felt or that kind of attraction wasn't acceptable at the time, we will probably never know. But what is glitchy Ariel saying? Well, not a great deal. There's a swamped riot police van in her lake, and the water is stagnant. Okay. Secondly, I also feel that Banksy was definitely implying that art and culture doesn't exist in theme parks, and that inserting this as something new and subversive. And that's very annoying to me. because I know someone who employed hundreds of artists and designers to fill their park with art. Walt Disney. So some of his artists like Rolly Crump, it's a funny name anyway, and Mary Blair created highly influential and popular imagery. Rides like It's a Small World and Pirates of the Caribbean are incredibly visually dense, which means that visitors can ride them over and over and over again and see something new every time. Everywhere you look, there's something moving, there's lights, there's smells, there's sounds. Mary Blair made a ceramic frieze in the Contemporary Hotel in Walt Disney World in Florida. And this is thought to be the most viewed piece of modernist art in the world. And you can see from her work how influential it was. It's such a hallmark of the 60s and 70s, this kind of graphic design. On the other hand, Dismaland is definitely a one and done. Once you've seen it, that's it. You don't need to go back and go, oh, I didn't see that was over there, and oh, I understand now. There's no depth to it. Perhaps there was a commentary here about the fake nature of theme parks. Well, obviously, yes, they're a built environment and they're full of artifice. False perspectives, fiberglass yetis, projection mapping, costumed actors pretending to be animated characters. But if that's a surprising revelation to you, well, I'm worried about you. Did you think Ariel was a real person? Are you four? Oh, well, in that case, that's fine. Carry on, but do not ask me about Santa. All forms of art and entertainment have these elements, and nowadays, even IKEA uses theme park tricks to stage their stores and displays to make them more appealing to customers. So that falseness is literally what people are paying for when they go to theme parks, as opposed to, say, a fairground or amusement park, where you're more going for just the rides and possibly to get off with somebody. At least that's what happened when I was a kid. People want theming, they want environmental storytelling. They're not deluded. They don't need Banksy to point this out. So if this was part of Banksy's concept, it was an extremely trite and silly one. We know, Banksy, we know. You don't need to tell us. But Dismaland's overall theme of a decrepit, miserable place filled with grumpy people isn't a new one. Just look at the entire oeuvre of the Smiths and Manchester. Juxtaposing a brightly coloured ride against a bleak backdrop is a really easy way of conveying irony. Look, here is this joyful thing, but it's surrounded by grey desperation. In fact, I think it's so popular that the meme has escaped, and in the minds of some people, that's what they think of when they see a fairground pop up or imagine themselves at a theme park, but that's obviously not the case. They're not miserable, depressing places, because if they were, they wouldn't make any money. They're ultimately supposed to be fun. Now, legendary theme park designer John Wardley said literally the same thing, that he felt there was nothing wrong with fun and just saying, here is a thing, it's fun. And that made me think actually of the Smiler at Alton Towers, because fun can have absolutely depth and it can have darkness. So the Smiler also used Banksy's concept of sinister, forced merriment. The Smiler doesn't need to have this theme spelled out explicitly. Instead, the whole experience, from the queue line with its sound effects and graphic design, the ride itself and even the exit, conveys the idea of a shadowy establishment attempting to enforce joy upon the visitors, and it does this extremely well. Alton Towers, for all its flaws, is able to tell stories through vague imagery, theming and music, as well as the kinetic energy of the rides themselves, and this remains one of its strengths. Finally, theme parks are not places devoid of irony or self-awareness. They don't need Banksy to insert that for them. Disney parks do in fact play with self-deprecation at times. The Dinoland USA area in Animal Kingdom was an attempt to copy a cheap, down-at-heel roadside attraction of the kind you can still find in Middle America to this day, which were, in turn, built in an attempt to copy Disney. And unfortunately for Disney, this area was in fact executed too well, and visitors were confused by the fairground attractions and the cracked concrete, and did not understand the reference. And unfortunately, the area is now being rethemed. Dilapidation, like artificial dilapidation in any event, is also not unknown in Disney. Well, the real dilapidation is also known in Disney if you go to the Fantasyland toilets at about 3 p.m. On a Saturday. But for example, the exterior of Phantom Manor / Haunted Mansion and Tower of Terror use a decaying building as the setting for the story itself. The new Villains Land, which is currently under construction in Disney World in Florida, is going to contain bleak scenes and crumbling facades as part of the design. So contrasting a bright frontage with something that's falling apart is again not new, and something that Disney and other theme parks do in fact use. So to conclude, I don't go to theme parks because, I was a Gen X kid, and I wasn't given a massive bowl of irony and sarcasm for breakfast every day, and now I go to theme parks and just sit there looking miserable. I go because they are, amazingly enough, places designed for people to have fun, and I like fun sometimes. And on that basis alone, Dismaland failed. It wasn't fun. It was dismal. And that's it. So that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope that if you weren't already familiar with Dismaland, that if you're interested to know more, I'll put some links in the thingy, so you can read a bit more about it, make up your own mind. There are some clips and things that I'll link to, because I didn't think it was fair to just pull all the clips and stuff and bung them here. So I've got a couple of few second blips if you want to see the whole thing. By all means, go and have a look at those. And it just remains me to say, like, comment and subscribe. Hi Evie, hi Jessica, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.